uh, Housing, Land Use, and Economic Development. It is May 16th, 2023, and the time now is 6:36 p.m. My name is Sandra Erickson. I am the Vice Chair of the Housing, Land Use, and Economic Development Committee. The committee agenda reads as follows. We're going to go through the meeting guidelines, then we'll take attendance. The committee will review the previous minutes from March 14th, and then we'll follow up from previous months. Fordham Landing, 2880 Jerome Avenue, Canva Housing Ventures, 202nd and 203rd. And then we have the Kingsbridge Armory. And so that is our agenda. Oh, no, that is not, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so then we have, let's see, we have a presentation tonight from City Planning, City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality. So that will be presented. We'll put that up for everyone to take a look at. And I'm going to now read the meeting guidelines. On April 20th, 2023, Mayor Adam issued Executive Order 387, extending the state of emergency through May 20th of 2023. Accordingly, boards are able to continue to act under the state of emergency section of the Video Conferencing Law, Chapter 56, Part WW. This allows the board to continue remotely. Minutes and video recording will be made available on our website. If you're calling into the meeting on the conference, controls while joining from landline or cell by dialing up number. To hear all available commands, enter ** on your phone. *6 to mute or unmute yourself, and *9 to virtually raise your hand. How we will run this meeting is as follows: Code of Conduct for meetings, penalties and actions. Bronx Community Board 7 has the right to remove and or ask a member of the public to leave a meeting or block participation of anyone who engages in inappropriate conduct, including but not limited to obscene or offensive images or language, personal attacks, threats, or any other behavior that reasonably impedes the orderly administration of the meeting. Repeated offenses will be reviewed by the board's executive committee or any other assigned committee. For a ban of that participant, the amount of time to be objectively determined by the above committee or committees in the event of repeated disruptive behavior. If a person's outburst or attacks continue, this will be considered disturbing the peace and the authorities shall be summoned. Everyone aside from the speaker, presenter will stay muted throughout the meeting. After each presentation is over, I will inquire if committee members have any questions. Committee members will signify that they have a question by pressing the raised hand button on your screen for Zoom, or request to speak through the chat or when the chair opens the floor. Members of the public who have joined through the online link will be able to ask questions and make a brief statement on the item after each presentation and after the committee has had an opportunity to ask clarifying questions. By pressing the raised hand button on your screen for Zoom, or request to speak through the chat or when the chair opens the floor. Only those recognized by the chair of the committee will be allowed to speak during the allotted time. We will stay on topic with the agenda items. Any other items will be acknowledged by the chair in new business or addressed at the next meeting, granted there is time and the committee agrees on the topic. Following the questions, discussion, and public comment portion, the committee will begin their discussion after each presentation or agenda item and will conclude with the decision to vote on a recommendation. When the agenda is finished, the meeting will be adjourned. If there's any questions related to the meeting software to our process, please use the chat function or raise hand function now or contact the district manager. Okay, oops, sorry about that noise in the background. The bikes are everywhere, as everybody knows. Okay, introduction, attendance. So Carla, do we have the attendance or should I just call out the name from my list?
You can call out the names on your list.
Eric Asensio, Edgar Ramos.
Edgar Ramos present.
Barbara Stronzer. Barbara, you're on mute. I think she's frozen.
Oh, yes, I think we may have lost her.
Okay, well, we know Barbara's there, so we can see her. Myrna Calderon,
Myrna Calderon, present.
Sandra Erickson, present. Helene Red,
Helene Red, present.
and Mabo Bourjul. Okay, and we do have quorum. Thank you very much, everyone. So next, I'd like to, has everyone had a chance to read the meeting minutes from our last meeting of April 11th? Okay, we just going through quickly here. Actually, I mentioned them before in error. Fordham Landing, we postponed that till the month of May, and I believe it's postponed another month till June. Then we have Project Renewal at 2880 Jerome Avenue. We had Kamba Housing Ventures, as I mentioned before. We discussed the Kingsbridge Armory with EDC, and there was a presentation from Girls Prep, Bronx 2 at 263 East 203rd Street. And then we had a boys prep, and then went on to discuss all the services that the prep school serves. And then I know I did bring up about the Sterling Signature Bank mortgages that are in peril at this time. And FDNY in regards to e-bikes, e-batteries, and the safety there, which everyone I'm sure has heard about. Can I ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 11th, 2023?
Myrna Calderon makes a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Myrna. Any second?
Helene Red, seconded.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion.
Aye,
carries.
with a correction.
Yes, please.
It's
Go
got the
ahead.
next meeting date is May 9th.
Oh, we do. I guess we must have had let's see. Committee reservation for March, okay. What do we have there? Okay, so we have, okay, so noted with that correction. Carla, did you make a note of that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, great.
Thank you,
so
Edgar.
much. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see. Then we have our new business. Tonight we have city planning, DCP update, City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality, citywide zoning text amendment. Who is going to be taking us through that tonight?
Hello, everyone. My name is Cesar Delgado, and I'm the liaison of the Department of City Planning for Community Board 7.
Welcome.
Thank you. Should I start? I'm going to share my screen. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. I'm going to ask you for a favor, and please let me know if you see the presenter's view or the
Yes, we see the deck. We see it.
Do you see the presenter's view or the full screen?
Full screen.
All right, then I think I should be ready to go. Well, first of all, again, my name is Cesar Delgado. I am the liaison of the Department of City Planning. I'm here this evening to talk to you about the City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality, an opportunity to update our zoning regulations to help all of us meet our city's climate goals. Before I start, I'm just gonna let you know this deck is about maximum 10-minute long, and I will answer all questions, or I will try to answer as the best of my capabilities, the questions you may have. And if not, I will definitely circle back to you through email or through a second presentation of the questions that might that I might need to touch base with my team. So let's start. The City of Yes Carbon Neutrality is the first of 3 projects that the Department of City Planning is developing as part of Mayor Adams' broader City of Yes initiative, charging agencies to take a hard look at outdated regulations holding New Yorkers back from investing in their homes, businesses, and our city overall. 2 other initiatives called Economic Opportunity and Housing Opportunity will begin more public engagement later this summer. They are distinct and independent proposals of these, and to avoid inundating community members during the public review process, they are being staggered the rest of this year and into next year. We have been researching sustainability related issues for several years, since the Zone Green in 2012. And with this foundation in place, we are ready to advance this work of the carbon neutrality. Additionally, many of the elements of this proposal are urgently needed, delivering zoning relief to home and building owners who are trying to undertake smart retrofit projects to cut energy costs and help the environment, but are prevented from doing so by zoning. Finally, City of Yes carbon neutrality isn't the last word of sustainability. Sustainable practices are deeply embedded into our planning work for decades and will continue to be present in all of our working, including economic opportunity and housing opportunity. Do you see my slides moving forward? Can I get a yes?
Yes.
All right. So why carbon? First, why are we even talking about carbon in this first place? It is important to emphasize we are facing a climate emergency, and it is largely fueled by global carbon dioxide emissions. Carbon dioxide makes up the vast majority of the United States greenhouse gas emissions, 80% at least in 2019. Carbon dioxide generally comes from human activity, specifically the combustion of fossil fuels like diesel, gasoline, natural gas, and home heating oil. In 2016, the world community joined.
John, let him eat rice cooked down his throat.
Helene could, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Should I continue?
Yes, please. Apologies
please, go
for
ahead.
that.
Sorry. In 2016, the world community joined together to sign the Paris Agreement, a vision to curtail human greenhouse gas emissions in order to limit overall global warming to 2 degrees Celsius and prevent further environmental damage associated with climate change. Here in New York City, we've been implementing this vision through a number of initiatives under the umbrella of achieving carbon neutrality by reducing the city's emission 80% by 2050. Next slide. So what do we mean by carbon neutrality? It is a city which we are focused on reducing operational carbon emissions in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. A carbon neutral city is a city where we have reduced our overall energy needs, and to do this, we will need to retrofit almost every building in the city to become highly efficient to reduce wasted energy. Of course, this is a process and it will take several years. The carbon neutral city is a city where we have cleaned the grid. And to do this, we will need to switch from a fossil fuel powered electricity to renewables like solar and wind. And it is a city where we have electrified all remaining energy needs. That includes our vehicles and our buildings as well. This means moving forward from fossil fuel fired furnaces and boilers to newer electrically powered technologies for heating and cooling, namely heat pumps. As you can see in this chart, the key drivers of our city's carbon emissions by far is our building sector. And there is a big relationship between our buildings and the zoning laws that govern them. And that's why I'm presenting today. When it comes to our research, we are building on a strong foundation. 10 years ago, in 2012, the department issued Zone Green, the first comprehensive overhaul of our zoning to support emerging green technologies like rooftop wind and solar. We were dipping our toe in the water, but could have gone further. In some ways, you can think of our research now as a follow-up to Zone Green, a chance to revisit it after 10 years to update it and adjust it in light of many of the technological and legal chances since. This includes, since 2016, the focus on decarbonization coming from the Paris Agreement and the 80/50 agreement. This also includes feedback from architects, engineers, and advocates about issues they've identified and ideas for improvements, as exemplified in this report from the Urban Green Council called Zone Greener. This also includes updating the zoning to reflect the Climate Mobilization Act at the city level, especially the local law 97, as well as the CLCPA at the state level. The development of this proposal began in March when Mayor Adams announced his vision for a city of yes. Since then, we've conducted extensive outreach, and in particular with practitioners and other subject matter experts, to help us ensure this proposal will be helpful to those who are trying to add solar, EV chargers, or heat pumps to their homes and businesses. TCP is sometimes criticized for not sharing enough information about what we are working on until it is in the public review process. But to make good on our promise to do better, we have held 4 open to the public info sessions on this research, 2 in October of last year and 2 in March of this year, to which our chair, Dan Garotwick, invited all community board chairs and encouraged them to share their information for these events with their boards. Also in March, we partnered with the Urban Green Council, a recognized leader in the climate work in New York City, to convene a group of technical and policy experts to review an initial draft of the proposal to validate the climate goals we are trying to support, as well as the solutions we are putting forward. Along the way, we've been asking experts, nonprofit leaders, and advocates, what do we need to do to help achieve our collective climate goals? How has zoning helped or hurt? Meeting the challenge of our climate crisis is a massive undertaking. Through our engagement over the last year, we've identified a number of ways that zoning can help support this effort. Tonight, we will review the 4 key goals the proposal seeks to support, as well as 17 specific zoning changes we have identified to achieve these 4 goals. The first key goal is supporting the decarbonization of our city's energy grid. Illustrated on this slide are initiatives already underway at the state or city level. These are not part of our zoning proposal. They are the context in which our planning is situated. By 2040, New York State is legally required to achieve 100% renewably based energy grid. To support this, we will be developing large amount of offshore wind and bringing in more clean hydroelectric power from upstate and Canada. However, this transition will need an all hands on deck. This includes putting all of our rooftops to work generating energy across the city. To give you a sense of where we stand with rooftop solar, in 2016, we set a goal of getting to 1,000 megawatts of rooftop solar across the city by 2030. To date, we are currently at around 300 to 400 megawatts. This means we have 7 years to do more than double the amount of solar in New York City in order to meet this goal. To utilize the energy from offshore wind and from rooftop solar, our energy grid will have to become smarter and more decentralized, with resources spread through the city instead of limited to utility sites in outlying areas. To support this smarter, more decentralized grid, we will need to rely on energy storage, essentially large batteries, which will act as the glue holding this grid of the future together. To support the ongoing work of cleaning the grid, New York City zoning can help in 5 key areas. First, we can take a fresh look at our rooftop zoning allowances to ensure that there aren't any limitations holding us back from our solar goals. In many districts, for example, there are current limits on the amount of rooftop that can be covered by solar canopies. This proposal will update those rules to ensure a roof can be completely covered by solar. Second, we need to take a similar approach for our city's 8,000 plus acres of open parking areas to ensure that zoning is updated to always allow solar canopies over parking lots. Third, if you want to generate clean energy for utility customers elsewhere in your neighborhood, throughout the community solar program, zoning considers that a commercial use. But we need to recognize there are large residential campuses, hospitals, schools, and colleges in residential districts where community solar would be a great fit. Zoning needs to be updated to allow for this. Number 4, we will need to ensure that SAFE, FDNY, and DOB reviewed storage facilities are located where they are needed the most. Energy storage is currently not allowed in the residence districts where customers need access to clean and renewable energy. Zoning needs to be updated to add specific rules for energy storage and help facilitate its rolled out across the city. Number 5, onshore wind faces strict limits in today's zoning without a relief valve for sites where greater heights may be appropriate. The zoning proposal will create a new tool that can be used by future applicants to submit onshore wind facilities for a public review process with the City Planning Commission. The second overall goal we are seeking to support relates to eliminating fossil fuels from our city's million-plus existing buildings, almost of which will be around in 2050 when we need to have achieved carbon neutrality. These buildings are by far our biggest sources of carbon dioxide emissions, and to improve, we will need to retrofit virtually every single building to retire oil or gas-powered furnaces and boilers, replace them with new, highly efficient electric systems, and improve the efficiency of exterior walls, windows, and roofs to keep the heat and the cool inside. It is important to note 2 laws adopted by the City Council in 2019 and 2021 that are crucial here. For large buildings, which are defined as buildings of 25,000 square feet and larger, Local Law 97 will begin to impose fines on these buildings if they do not cut their carbon emissions. Fines will begin in 2024 and will increase through 2050. Second, Local Law 154 requires that all newly constructed buildings are electrified from the get-to-go. Fossil fuel-based equipment will no longer be allowed in new construction. Within this context, zoning can help to support the decarbonization of buildings in 3 key ways. First, zoning can accommodate the increasing need for outdoor equipment, such as heat pumps, which cannot be located in building basement or cellars, to be located above the zoning height limit on building rooftops. By getting zoning out of the way, we will give homeowners, architects, and engineers greater flexibility to navigate their best path to electrification. Second, zoning needs to ensure that where someone is trying to add thicker insulation or even reclad the building by removing an old facade or part of an old facade and replacing it with a new efficient one, that they don't run into zoning obstacles that prevent them from undertaking the project. Thirdly, we need to update an existing incentive, the 2012 Zone Green Wall Thicknesses Reduction, which awards a small amount of additional floor area for better than code buildings, it is updated to reflect the latest energy code and best practices for the future. Finally, let's talk about the cost. Undertaking this work will not be free, but there are billions of dollars at federal, state, and city level available to support it. The New York City Accelerator is a program run out of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice that can help you connect with technical and financial support. Everyone, before starting a project, will give them a call. The third goal zoning is seeking to support is decarbonizing the private vehicles that New Yorkers drive and own. There are currently 2 million private vehicles registered in New York City, and a tiny fraction, less than 1%, are zero emission. To help owners make the switch to electric, federal and state initiatives are underway. But one key issue zoning touches is where can you park and charge your electric vehicle? Addressing these will need to be key for us to help New Yorkers make this switch. By 2035, New York State in Albany has indicated that all new vehicles sold in the state will need to be zero emission. This will be a long-term transition, but we know that the future is electric and more vehicles will be electric and will need places to charge. Finally, we also recognize that the future isn't simply focused on vehicles. The more trips that can be taken by bicycle, scooter, on foot, or by transit, the better for health, for environment, and our city. Within this context, zoning can help support this goal with 5 key changes. First, allow commercial charging facilities in all commercial and manufacturing districts. They are currently prohibited in about half of the city's commercial districts. Second, allow building owners to designate a portion of their existing parking spaces to be offered as public electric vehicle charger shared spaces. The same rules that currently apply today for car sharing vehicles in existing parking garages or lots. Third, allow for more flexible use of public parking lots, public parking garages, and commercial accessory parking facilities by allowing car rental, car sharing, commercial vehicle storage, and public EV charging within these facilities too. Number 4, expand the special rules that only apply in Manhattan that allow for indoor automated parking facilities to be available everywhere citywide. Fifth, update our parking rules to acknowledge the need of public bicycle parking and allow bike parking facilities in commercial districts. Finally, our last goal relates to reducing our city's stormwater and solid waste and helping eliminate the carbon emissions associated with both of these waste streams. First, we can reduce stormwater runoff by promoting greater permeability on the ground. This means less water flowing to energy-intensive treatment plants. Second, we can reduce the energy associated with hauling and processing garbage by reducing the amount. Up to 45% of our waste stream is organic material that doesn't need to go to landfill and can be reused within the city. Third, we can reduce the carbon emission associated with our food by promoting more local food production on our city's rooftops. Within that context, zoning can help contribute to a better environment in 4 key ways. First, clarify zoning paving rules to ensure that permeable paving, which allows water to infiltrate the soil right where it falls, is always allowed. Second, update our zoning tree requirements to allow for new high-performance tree bed types, such as connected tree beds and rain gardens. Third, our zoning resolution doesn't even mention the words compost or recycling. It's time to add specific rules clarifying where these uses are allowed to help these sectors grow. And finally, rooftop greenhouses are allowed on top of non-residential buildings. But to build one, current rules require you to obtain a certification from the chair of the City Planning Commission. By streamlining these requirements, we will allow DOB, to the Department of Buildings, to review applications for building permits and cut costs and simplify the process for those looking to grow food on their community's rooftops. That concludes our overview of the 17 specific zoning changes we have identified to help to support the larger project of decarbonizing our city to keep it clean, healthy, and equitable for the years to come.
Thank you very much, Cesar. We've had a couple of comments. I know that people are always asking, I'm in building management and building rehab, and where will all the electricity come from? A lot of people do bring that up, but I'm sure that will be something that goes along with this whole initiative. And I'm going to first ask if any committee members have any questions or comments, and please keep them brief so we can end on time.
Do you mind if I just finish this slide with a final comment?
Oh, okay, sure.
Thank you very much. Just to finalize, as a citywide zoning text amendment, this process will continue for the next several months. It's nothing rushed. All 59 community boards will be concurrently reviewing this proposal with their borough boards and borough presidents too. In July, the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on the proposed changes. In August, taking into account all they heard during the review process, the Commission will vote on approving or modifying the proposal and will then pass it on to the City Council, where the City Council will have 50 days to ultimately adopt the zoning changes and make them a law. Thank you very much. Now I will start taking questions and notes.
Okay, Sarah, again, I'll go ahead and ask if there's any committee members who have any questions or comments.
Myrna Calderon.
Go ahead, Myrna.
Okay, so unlike a lot of people in city planning and on the community boards and on city council, I actually have a degree in science. And I know a lot of this stuff that they're doing supposedly to try to help the environment is actually hurting the environment. Most of this is based on junk science. There are a lot of scientists that are against all of these mandates. And I just want to I keep reminding people, whenever you say CO2 emissions, I just want to let you know, every time we breathe out, I grew up in the 60s, where there was a commercial that reminded everybody that we breathe out carbon dioxide, which actually is good for the environment, it's good for the plants. Plants cannot survive without carbon dioxide. So be very careful when you use those terms. The second thing is, a lot of these things that the city is mandating is hurting home ownership, it's hurting landlords, it's hurting anybody that owns co-ops. They're trying to, you're throwing these mandates at us without any assistance. I happen to be president of a co-op, one of the largest co-ops in the city. No assistance. We're going to have to take out more loans to catch up with all these mandates. We have been for years doing our best, changing, following the concerns, not using the oil that toxifies the air. We've been doing so many things, but you keep throwing stuff at homeowners, and it's just making people leave New York City. And a lot of these things are based from other countries, and I don't want other countries telling the United States what to do. We have been doing such a good job from the 60s of taking care of the environment. We have done more than any other country in the world. And we're being forced, these things are being jammed down our throats without any understanding of how to do it.
Myrna, I was
And-
going to suggest let Cesar answer just
Yeah,
very
he's
briefly.
not going to be able to answer me
Well,
because he doesn't have the kind of technical
but he
skills
can-
to answer what I'm
Okay, but
going to say.
we can table it and talk about it.
Yeah, but let me just say two more things because I just want to make a comment. I don't really want I don't want city planning answers. I don't want city council answers because they have no answers. They're just going to jam this down our throats whether we like it or not. And one of the things that I really have an issue with, they want to put these wind turbines offshore. We already have dead whales coming up on the Long Island Sound, on the Jersey Shore, wherever they're putting these things, they're killing the whales. So much for caring for our animals. We have birds, wherever they have put these windmills up, they have dead birds, now we don't care about the eagles anymore. They're dying everywhere. So you know what? It's a bunch of baloney and I'm sick of the junk science. And I think people, before they jump on this bandwagon, they need to do their own research so they really know. That's why I got on this meeting tonight, because I'm really sick of hearing this from people who don't even really understand science and don't really understand the environment.
Okay.
We are not, they used to say when I was in school, it was, oh, it's global cooling. Oh, then it's global warming, but they had to change that because it's no more global warming anymore. So, oh, it's climate change. Well, the climate's always changing. This has been changing since the beginning of time.
Okay, Myrna,
This is just the
wanna
way it is.
interrupt you, Myrna, only
Yeah.
because no one else is going to get a chance to speak.
Okay,
So,
that's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's all I have to
Thank
say.
you, and I appreciate your passion. I know that we have a lot of passionate comments on both sides. I'm also in building management, and a lot of non-for-profits are having trouble funding some of these initiatives. So perhaps that's something we can look into too, Cesar. Is there any funding available for non-for-profit building owners or homeowners and things like that to help them comply with some of these requirements?
Yes. First of all, I want to make sure that everyone understands that everything that we speak, I will bring it to the table for discussion. We are not ignoring any comment here. It doesn't matter if it's against or supportive. I'm here to take the notes and inform. And all I have to say is that we are not working alone. DCP is not working alone. It's not something that we have worked in this year or the last couple of years. It's based on extensive research. The agencies that we work with do not only have planners, we also have environmentalists and scientists, and everything is based on also research. In terms of the programs, yes, there will be several types of programs where nonprofits and profits can approach, and also will be tax breaks and different programs that adapt to the different communities to accomplish these. And it's very important to know that nothing as of now will be mandated. No one will be obligated to adopt anything. And that is very important.
Thank you. Can I ask now if there's any other committee members who have any comments? Carl, I just want to note that if you could mark Eric Asensio present, I did see him on the here, so I did see him. Okay, then we'll go on to community board members. I see Jean Hill has her hand raised. Jean, do you have time for a quick comment?
Yeah, just a quick one. I'm in an older rental building and we're almost 50 years old. So when you talk about retrofitting, how is that going to affect an older building who does not have, we're a rental building, so where's the funding supposed to come from? So now you're talking about, you know, putting electric charging stations in, which I can see that. And because we know electric cars are going to be the thing of the future. But what I'm concerned about is the cost of having all of this stuff done. And if you're mandating that we have to do this by a certain time period, then it seems to me that the cost is going to be borne by the tenants or even co-op people like Myrna is suggesting, and we're supposed to get the money when we're already stretched to the limits of trying to just keep a roof over our head. And now you want to mandate all these new rules. And a lot of times these things do just get shoved down our throats, and we just have to fall in line with it, whether we like it or not. So for
Okay.
older buildings, rental buildings, how's that supposed to work out?
Okay, I think in the interest of time, Cesar, if you could make a note of all our questions so we can let everyone speak, and then maybe we can have you back, or we can, Carla can send a list of questions and you can get back to us. This way everyone can get to speak. Okay, community board members, we have Victor. Go ahead and make a quick comment for Cesar.
Hi, good evening. Yes, I think I think this is great. If we can get more information, and I'm sorry if I missed it, I was driving, but is there examples of other municipalities or cities in the United States that have gone through this change? I know New York City is a large scale, but something that we might have seen happen in other cities, if they've been successful or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. I'm going to ask AJ, you've had your hand up. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I think this presentation is great, but does not do enough to address the climate crisis we currently face. As a private citizen without an ownership in any co-op or development or other conflict of interest in this, please stop the fear mongering and do something to sustain a sustainable future for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. How about Malcolm Gray from Jerome Gun Hill? Bid.
Hey, thank you. I think the biggest concern that I have is, some of the small businesses will operate in these big buildings. How will this affect their operating costs, and whether or not the city will be providing, any type of tax credits or tax cuts or any type of funding to help the small businesses, adjust to this type of change.
Okay, great question. A lot of good questions. Oh, Mr. Guarino, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. One observation or question that's connected to it. I noticed you had included greenhouses on the roof, but then you were talking about solar panels on the roof. Are these combined together, or you can't have one without the other? Just out of curiosity, how would it work? Because I didn't see any greenhouses with solar panels with them, so I'm just confused by that.
Hey, Sylvia, that's a great question, Cesar. If you've written down all those questions, if you can, we'll work them out together in my notes and Carla's notes and your notes, and then you can just get us some answers there if you noted them all. And any other questions that come in, send them into the community board office, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more discussion. Thank you very much, Cesar. That was a very detailed presentation. And now do we have it, Carla? We have it to share with the board members, right? We can send it out to all our board members.
Yes, we have the presentation. We can send it out to everyone.
Yeah, so if everyone gets to look at it some more, and then we come up with other comments, we'll get a comprehensive list to send over to Cesar. And thank you again for your very detailed presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for the time, and I will be in close contact with Carla, and I've taken note of everything, and I will also keep my email open and we'll reply as soon as possible.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, our next item.
Sandra, just so you know, DCP is also looking to not only get feedback from the community board, but also get a count of the vote. See if board members support the amendment or not. Cesar, is it possible for you to come back at our next meeting in June?
Definitely. Yes, I can give you answers to the concerns and questions. The latest is that by the beginning of next week, and definitely I can come back by June. And yes, we are looking to receive hopefully a letter of support.
Okay, that was my next question. We won't have
Barbara,
I don't think we're
and I
going to
could
have
just make
time.
one
Excuse
more
me, Mona,
comment.
just 1 second. I don't think we're going to have time at the June meeting to do the presentation. Perhaps that's why it'd be good to just send it out to all board members so they can be aware of it.
Yeah, Carla has the presentation.
Okay, and Myrna, you can certainly make additional
of order.
comments. Okay.
Yeah, two things.
No, Myrna, we
It
can't.
would not be,
sorry, we don't
it
have
would not be,
time.
yeah,
to
no,
do
no,
this.
I'm just making a quick comment. It's hard to send this presentation out without all the information. This is a one-sided presentation. And number two is our electric grid cannot handle the extra power that is going to be needed to electrify New York City, period.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. All right, so just we were going to be asked for a letter of support from the metropolitan housing providers, but they were not fully prepared tonight, so we'll hear from them at our next meeting. And now I'm just going to go through the list. The Office of the New York City Comptroller is I see someone is present here tonight.
Yes, good evening,
Yes. Do
everyone.
you have anything to share regarding housing, land use, and economic development?
Yes, we do. We have two presentations, but before we start, I just wanted to introduce myself. Good evening, everyone. My name is Grim Mayhew. I'm the Bronx Borough Director for the Office of the New York City Comptroller. And today I have a couple of wonderful staff members from our office who will present on two different reports that our office issued this year. The first one will be the heat code enforcement report. And Nicole will present on that one. And then after that, Mary Ann from our office will present a report that we issued on the COVID-19 financial assistance program that was facilitated by SBS. So on that note, Nicole, if you can begin, and I'll
Nicole and Marian, I just ask in the interest of time if you could condense it. We want to hear from you, but thank you. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And also, can I share the screen? I'm sorry.
Yeah, is Greer able to get screen sharing access for our slides?
Yes, Greer, go ahead.
Perfect.
Great. In the meantime, hi everyone. My name is Nicole. I'm the strategic organizer for housing in the New York City Comptroller's office. I'm happy to chat with you all about all things housing, but today we'll be focusing on our heat code enforcement report. So Greer, we can move on to the next slide.
Yes. Hold on. Let's do that.
Great. And just so folks know, our office wrote this report for a few reasons. One is, of course, the tragedy that I'm sure you're unfortunately all very familiar with, the fire at the Twin Parks building that took the lives of 17 New Yorkers. The building wasn't getting adequate heat, so residents had to resort to using dangerous space heaters. And that tragedy is unfortunately emblematic of the city's problems with heat code enforcement. So there were over 100 fires in New York City residential buildings between 2017 and 2021, which the report focuses on, that were caused by space heaters. And on heat issues more broadly, there were nearly 1 million 311 calls about heat issues. But you'll see that a key issue here is that there's a low conversion rate between complaints to violations. Of those 1 million calls, only about 21,600 of them became violations. That's about 2% of them. We also wrote this report because we know that persistent heat issues has a significant impact on mental and physical health. If you're constantly freezing in your own home, especially for long persistent periods of time, that'll take a toll on you. So in response to these issues around the lack of adequate heat, the goal of our report was to use a data-informed approach on how we can improve the whole code enforcement regime. We can move on to the next slide.
And we're not moving. And you're not moving.
Great. I'm sure many of you know this, so I'll be quick on this slide. Just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page about the current heat code enforcement system. Landlords are required to ensure there's adequate heat year-round, but especially during what we call the heat season, which runs from October 1st through May 31st. So when you call 311 to complain about heat issues, you get directed to HPD or Housing Transport Heat Development. And then HPD will notify the landlord, reach out to the tenant that complained. And if the issue isn't resolved, they send an inspector. If the heat issues persist, that landlord will get a notice of violation or NOV if the heat is below the legal minimum. So that's a simplification of the process that comes with many challenges that we'll get into later. And if there's anyone from HPD here on the call, happy to get your feedback on this too. Next slide, please. Our report focuses on heat complaints between 2017 and 2021. If you look on the graph on the on the left, you'll see that the blue is heat complaints, the much smaller bar of orange are violations, and the gray bar is the percentage of how many of those complaints became violations. And you'll see that the number has been pretty consistently low with a slight recent uptick, but nevertheless, a very small percentage of complaints pretty consistently get recorded as violations. On the chart to the right, you can see that just over 51% of all heat code complaints made to 311 between that time period of 2017 to 2021 were resolved when HPD staff made the phone contact with a tenant in the building where the complaint was made and confirmed that the conditions were corrected. And that leads to all complaints in the building being closed. An additional 24% of heat complaints over the past 5 years were closed when an inspector was advised by a tenant in the building that heat was restored, but it's unclear from the data how that information was gathered. 13% of all complaints were closed because the code inspector could not gain access, and 3% resulted in a violation. Next slide, please. Now I'll go through a series of interventions that we analyzed that the city could take in response to these issues. So that includes violations, litigation, the emergency repairs program, and the heat sensor program. So starting with violations, as many of you know, Class C violations are the most immediately hazard violations that have to be corrected within the quickest time frame, in this case, 24 hours. If they certify of correction within 24 hours, you can submit a payment of $250 plus a minimal processing fee to satisfy the civil penalties. And ultimately, our analysis found that when a landlord is issued a violation for failure to supply adequate heat, there are significantly fewer heat-related tenant complaints to 311 the following heat season. And we saw a 46% average drop in this case, or an 81% median drop. So our overall assessment of violations as a method of code enforcement is that even though violations can be difficult for tenants to get recorded, they are effective in changing landlord behavior the following heat season. Next slide, please. The next slide is HPD initiated litigation. So between this time frame of 2017 to 2021, the city initiated litigation for failure to provide heat 10,000 times for slightly over 8,000 buildings. But we did find that there's been a significant recent decline. So we're tracking that as well. We found that nevertheless, litigation remains also an effective code enforcement tool because we also saw a steep drop in heat-related complaints the following heat season, in this case, a 45% average drop or 80% median. It's unclear, though, in how many cases those civil penalties are actually being collected. So the state comptroller found that as of March 2022, HPD has yet to collect 1.4 million of some of those civil penalties. Next slide, please. The next intervention we analyze is the emergency repair program. So if an owner fails to restore heat after a violation, the city can contract with vendors to do the necessary repair work or have HPD staff make the repairs themselves. The cost is then billed to the landlord, and if they fail to pay, the fines can be placed as a lien against the building. We also found this to be an effective strategy, in this case, a 38% drop or 88% median drop of heat complaints the following heat season. Next slide. The final intervention is the heat sensor program. So a local law requires HPD to identify 50 buildings every 2 years with a significant history of heat complaints and violations. And those owners are required to install a heat sensor in the living room in every unit of the building in the beginning of the heat season. HPD then conducts inspections of the building every 2 weeks for 4 years to make sure that they're actually improving on those issues. This is a relatively new program, so there is limited but promising data. We found a 54% average drop or 62% median drop after the installation of those heat sensors. But again, the state comptroller found that effectiveness of the program is significantly limited by landlord failure to comply with the program. So for example, here in the Bronx, 56% of buildings that were selected for the program did not actually install the heat sensors required. Next slide, please. It's important to note that complaints don't occur significantly or reoccur significantly in most buildings, meaning that in most cases, complaints actually come from buildings where there are 5 or fewer more complaints within the same heat season, because we know that property owners do their best to be responsive when they can. And most of the time when a tenant complains about lack of heat to 311, it does result in the issue being resolved. So a significant focus of the report are these persistent bad actors. So lack of heat is persistent and severe in a small number of buildings, leading to tenants having just months of heat outages. And as we mentioned earlier, this can lead to those really significant negative mental health and physical health impacts, especially for those who are already at higher risk, children and the elderly in particular. So in addition to all those physical risks, again, also has that mental health toll too, and tenants may resort to unsafe options like the space heaters, which pose serious fire risks. So 30% of all complaints were made in just over 1,000 buildings in New York City, which represents about 1.5% of all buildings where complaints were made. And those are concentrated in places like the South and East Bronx, Central East Brooklyn, and Harlem, and we'll soon unpack some of the racial justice implications of that geographic spread. But in 803 of those buildings had at least one or of the 4 interventions we discussed: violations, litigation, emergency repairs, or the heat sensor program. But we did find concerningly that in about 274 of them, over 25% of the buildings, there were barely any interventions, if any, from the city. So that's something that we're concerned about as well. Next slide, please. As we noted in the previous slide, many of those buildings that have the most severe issues are concentrated in a few geographic clusters in neighborhoods where a majority of the residents are people of color. And the 5 community districts with the highest volume of 311 complaints are communities where residents are 93% non-white. Many of these neighborhoods were subject to redlining, disinvestment, landlord abandonment, arson, and high levels of municipal foreclosure of privately owned buildings as well. And now those are the same communities that are facing speculative purchases and high eviction rates. Next slide. So what are the current challenges to effective heat code enforcement? How can we address them? And before I get into this, I know we have folks in building management here in this space. So if there's any particular challenges you want to flag for us, we're absolutely all ears for that too. But the first set of barriers I want to talk about is for tenants and the difficulty of actually getting violations recorded. A key barrier is the timing of inspections. Unlike peeling paint or a leaking faucet, heat obviously changes. So sometimes we know that building owners will temporarily turn up the heat in advance of an inspection and then turn it off again after the inspection. And we know that HPD has some internal standards, but they're not quite complying to those internal standards for their timeframes. And another issue is the lack of tenant notifications. So tenants can't actually schedule the inspections or receive advance notice, so they can't properly plan for when the inspector will come. So that's why a 2015 audit in our office also found that we need some more technological upgrades to be able to more effectively address and schedule these. Another big problem is that multiple complaints from one building are collapsed into an initial complaint, which obscures how many complaints might be coming from that building. And then an inspector who comes doesn't have a full purview of what's going on in that building. So we think we should pass a bill introduced by Councilmember Pirina Sanchez to expand the heat sensor program, and also should prioritize the buildings that do have that chronic history of heat complaints and make sure that inspectors are able to see that full breadth of history in the building instead of just one complaint. And we should make sure that these are scheduled when the tenants are actually home too. Next slide, please. The next set of challenges is around barriers to addressing the underlying issues. HPD doesn't have too much of a strategic or coordinated response to these buildings with chronic and persistent complaints. So to that end, our recommendation is to have joint HPD and DOB inspections of central heating and distribution systems to get to the bottom of what these root causes are. HPD also really needs to contact the owner and make sure they understand what the specific challenges are and develop a plan for correction with them. For example, maybe the owner needs better training or funding support for improving their heating system because maybe it's really old and outdated. They need more energy efficient windows, and we should be able to help connect them to that funding or to other city agencies. Because this report, ultimately, it's not to say that property owners are doing a bad job. It's also to say that folks need help to address these issues. But if a landlord isn't willing to comply, the city should explore using programs such as 7A to make comprehensive repairs, and pass the public advocates bill to increase penalties when necessary for those property owners that consistently don't address this issue. Next slide. And finally, one of the inherent problems here is the reliance on tenant complaints to address heat issues instead of being proactive about them. We're unfortunately more reactive to them. And that's a problem because many tenants are afraid to call 311, especially if they're undocumented, if they don't want contact from the government, if they're afraid of retaliations. if retaliation, tenants who are not rent regulated, especially, might be afraid that they're not going to get their lease renewed if they complain. The housing crisis in the city obviously makes that even harder when there's a vacancy of less than 1% for apartments that rent below $1,500. So our recommendation here is for expanded multilingual outreach and to also pass stronger good cause eviction protections so that tenants feel safe bringing up these issues in their homes. Next slide. Great. So that's our analysis of the 4 different interventions as it relates to buildings, particularly with those persistent chronic heat issues. And we're hoping from this report, we can partner with different council members, advocacy groups, civic institutions to push forward some of these recommendations. And we'll likely kick up our organizing again as we get closer to the next heat season.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I just wanted to add that I'm in building management since 1984, and I work with a lot of small groups, non-for-profits and such. I have a different opinion. I think HPD does come out within 24 hours. That's our experience. Not that I'm a chronic, but just what I hear from others. And someone's question came in the chat, what about the fines? Well, most building owners have a mortgage, someone that holds a mortgage, and you cannot get a mortgage when you have fines like that on there. So there is an incentive. People do have to pay up, but if you can share that deck with us, that'd be great. So we can discuss it with the committee and see how we can get involved in that, because no one wants to see people suffer with not sufficient heat. So thank you. Now, quickly, there was your colleague was going to, Marianne, were you going to add something? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'm actually going to speak on a different subject altogether, on some audits we conducted of 2 separate programs that were administered by the Department of Small Business Services related to COVID-19 financial assistance for small business services. So I'm Mary Ann Mullaney. I'm within the Audit Bureau. I'm joined tonight by Colvin Netlin, also from the Audit Bureau. And I would ask if Colvin can please share a presentation, and we will give the quick version. Let's stay on time.
Thank you.
Okay, so the objectives of these 2 audits were, again, looking at the employee retention grant program, as well as the small business services, small business continuity loan fund program. And these were to see if they complied with the award rules and if they had adequate controls over award. And so I'll be brief on background for the 2 programs, just to give you a small history of it. March 8th, 2020, the city announced it would provide relief to small businesses who were adversely affected by the pandemic through these 2 programs. So the grant program was designed to help small businesses retain employees for 2 months until federal funding became available, essentially a stopgap program that provided grants of up to $27,000 to cover part of their payroll costs for 2 months. And to qualify for the program, applicants had to demonstrate that a business located in New York City in operation at least 6 months. And again, small businesses. So this one was geared to businesses with 1 to 4 employees. And they had to demonstrate at least a 25% decrease in revenue or sales due to the pandemic and have no outstanding tax liens or legal judgments. And SBS accepted applications for approximately a 2-week period from the mid-March to the beginning of April for the grant program. And you can see some statistics on the overall program on the number of applications received, the number of grants awarded, and the total dollar value of those grants. Similarly, for the loan program, the purpose of this program, again, helping small businesses, this was to retain employees and ensure business continuity. This one was designed to help over the course of the pandemic and offered 0 interest loans of up to $75,000 for qualified businesses. The eligibility requirements were pretty similar to those of the grant program, so I won't go over each of them again. Just some differences. For the loan program, businesses had to be in operation for at least 2 years, And this program was designed to help small businesses with less than 100 employees. And again, similarly, about a 2-week application window and some statistics there for you on the number of applications in total for the program and awards and the dollar value of those awarded loans. So as part of our review, we looked at a number of things, but we looked at equity and distribution. And in the 2020 Mayor's Management Report, SBS reported that equity and opportunity are at the core of their work, and they're committed to ensuring economic security for all New Yorkers throughout the 5 boroughs. However, the 2 audits that we conducted, both of the grant program and the loan program, found that funds were not equitably distributed across the 5 boroughs and that funds were disproportionately awarded to businesses which were located in Manhattan, which left the outer boroughs underserved. We compared the number and percentage of small businesses in each borough to the number and percentage of applicants, recipients, and awarded funds for the grant program, and found that small business grant applications and awards were disproportionately lower in the Bronx, as detailed in the table. Although 7.9% of New York City small businesses with 1 to 4 employees were located in the Bronx accounted for only 4.3% of applications and received only 2% of grant program funds. Conversely, those businesses located in Manhattan accounted for 37.7% of businesses in the city. However, they received just over 63% of grant program funds, as detailed in this chart. So the blue bar is representing the percentage of small businesses within each borough, with the orange bar representing the percentage of grant funds which were awarded for each of the boroughs. So as you can see, Manhattan received disproportionately more funds, while each of the other boroughs received less funds. We also reviewed and mapped distribution by zip code and found that the highest grant program awards were for businesses located in the Manhattan neighborhoods of Clinton, Midtown, Chelsea, downtown Manhattan, and Tribeca. So the zip codes that received more than $1 million are shown in the darkest green shades, and those that received less fundings are in the lighter shades of green. So less colorful, the less money that was received. And then those zip codes that did not receive any fundings for the program are shaded in gray. So as you can see in this visual representation, the Bronx is shaded in light green, indicating it received, again, little funding from the grant program. We have also a table that shows those zip codes and neighborhoods. Here we just highlighted the top 10 that received the most grant funds and the dollar amounts of those grants and the number of grants associated with it. And again, showing that primarily areas of Midtown, Chelsea, and downtown Manhattan were the primary beneficiaries of the grant program. We also compared the percent of small businesses by industry to the percentage of grant funds awarded, with the blue bar representing the percentage of small businesses in each industry type, with orange being the funds awarded for those industries. And we found that grant programs, again, were not distributed proportionately to certain industries. And in particular, so at the very bottom of the chart, the professional, scientific, and technical service industry, which would include professions such as lawyers, architects, accountants, disproportionately benefited from the program. Although they accounted for 14% of roughly small businesses, they received more than 23% of those funds. With regard to the loan program, we found essentially very similar findings. So we'll just kind of go through quickly. You know, the same issues appeared in the loan program as were with the grant program in terms of equitable distribution. with outer boroughs being underserved, and in particular, small businesses in the Bronx being loan applications and awards being disproportionately lower. And you can see this in the table as well as in the chart. And again, similarly to the businesses located in Manhattan accounted for more awards than those in the other boroughs, and the other boroughs being left underserved as a result. And again, the same neighborhoods as with the grant program received the highest awards. Again, Manhattan neighborhoods, Clinton, Midtown, Chelsea, Downtown, Tribeca. Similarly, those zip codes that received the most fundings are shaded in dark green. The lighter the shade, the less money that was received, and zip codes that did not receive any funding are shown in the beige, in the neutral tone. As you can see, most of the Bronx zip codes are shaded in beige, including those within Bronx Community Board 7, indicating they received no funding through the loan program. And there are some Bronx zip codes that are shaded in light green, indicating that they received some lesser amounts of funding. And again, similarly, top 10 zip codes for the loan program awards, same neighborhoods of Manhattan coming up again. Okay, so as part of the audit, we examined why did this happen? So, and we found that SBS awarded loans and grants on a first come, first served basis and did not consider the COVID-19 impact on various neighborhoods, and in particular, those with high concentrations in businesses or industries which were most impacted by the pandemic, and did not consider distribution across the five boroughs. The findings also suggest that SBS did not adequately market both the grant and loan program across the 5 boroughs. Particularly, we looked at applications and saw that they were underrepresented as well as the awards. SBS had informed us that it publicized the programs through various means, including a mayoral announcement, town hall meetings, social media, notification to community partners, and email lists. However, they did not provide us generally documentation to support this. While we acknowledge that SBS did implement these programs very quickly at the beginning of the pandemic, management and officials entrusted with public resources are responsible for providing services to the public equitably. In response to the audit's findings, SBS stated that it had little control over how funds were distributed, and that at the time there was no known geographic or industry impacts and no rational basis for establishing targets either by geography or sector to distribute funds. Nevertheless, SBS did acknowledge there were issues with distribution of the limited pandemic funding. To address the issues, we recommended that for future financial assistance programs, SBS increase its outreach to underserved areas and distribute funds to the public equitably. SBS did agree with those 2 recommendations and reported that it launched a variety of other loan and grant programs that targeted businesses in low to moderate income geographies or areas that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So that's an overview of the findings of the 2 audits. We thank you again for the opportunity to speak about them, and we will share links in the chat if you were interested in additional materials on this. We will include links to the 2 audit reports we discussed. We'll also include a link to all of our audits and investigation reports, as well as a recommendations tracker and a suggest an audit or investigation feature on our website, as well as some city council hearing testimony and reports that were issued on this subject as well. And just to give a little plug for our recommendations tracker, for those audits that were issued after January 1st, 2022, we are putting on our website a recommendations tracker, so you can look by city agency, what we've recommended and whether or not they've agreed to implement those recommendations and their status. And also a little plug for our suggest an audit or investigation. Again, links will be in the chat. If you would like to offer ideas for any audits or investigations, you can submit your ideas through an online form on our website. And
Thank you, Mary
thank you very
Ann.
much for the opportunity. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I want to add that I'm a vice president of the Bronx Chamber. Some of what you're saying, we did see ourselves, but we were everywhere helping businesses, you know, before and especially during and after COVID. And we did learn a lot as well. And I really do thank you for this. But as Myrna said and some other people, we did talk about it at our meetings. We did, you know, do our best to get the word out there. So, you know, it's not to discount the fact there were the chambers, the community boards, we were doing what we could, but, you know, obviously there's a lot more that can be done. And there's a lot out there for small businesses right now. SBS, I think, is doing a good job at getting the word out there. So,
Yes. And
you.
they did change their approach, you know, evolved over
Yeah.
time, which is,
That's
and they
great.
were accepting of the findings and recommendations, which is always positive. We are looking just to improve city government.
Okay, I just want to move on. HPD, I see Winnie Campbell's on. Winnie, anything for us tonight? Okay, probably nothing. How about the Department of Buildings? Anyone on?
Hi, good evening. The only update that I had is just that we have a new commissioner. He was appointed by Mayor Adams. He was the former borough president of Staten Island. His name is James Adams, and he will be serving as a commissioner for DOB.
Great. I hear he's very knowledgeable and very excited to take on this position. It's a big one with
Yes,
all
he
the
is.
building going on, and we wish him the best of luck, please. DOB has always been very, we had an issue just this week, and our acting district manager reached out to DOB, and she was able to help one of our constituents, one of our businesses, providing an essential service. And I thank Carla for that, and I thank DOB for that. That was great. How about the Commission on Human Rights?
All right.
Anyone? Okay. Our next meeting date is June 20th, 2023. A discussion on next agenda, Fordham Landing South Development by Dynamic Star. So that'll be important. I know we have a lot of opinions there too, but we're curious to hear first about the part that is as of right. We're not talking about one where that will need a zoning change. Is there any other business that any committee member would like to bring up? Or any community board member? Or anyone else from the of our attendees here? I know we are just, well, it's just about 6 minutes to 8.
AJ's got a question.
Yes, go ahead. Make it quick.
Hello, yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is there any update on Sam's floor covering or that whole part of Webster from Marsh Loop Parkway North to 204th? I believe Mr. Serio had raised some reservations about that corner, and all those buildings are being torn down as well. Is there any updates from the board on that?
Yeah, I don't know. Has anyone heard anything? I know it's come up with the old Sam's carpet. We've heard of a couple things that tried to go in there, but then they didn't because there was a school nearby. Barbara, how about you? Have you heard anything?
Nothing of late, no.
Okay, all right.
Yes, ma'am. It's the Sam's, then there's a gas station, then there's another group of buildings that were torn down closer to the corner. So it's like a couple of developments all on that same block section. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, maybe
I'll work on getting an update. See if I can get an
Carly,
update.
you're great.
someone.
You're great at that. You're a great investigator.
I
So,
didn't know that there was a proposal for housing there by the owner of the property. And then I know the 52nd Community Council was trying to work to get a substation for the 52nd precinct at that site as well. But nothing has come of either options.
Yeah. Well, I know many years ago, we did the 197A plan. I know Jean and Barbara and some others remember that, to encourage more housing with ground floor active uses for Webster Avenue, to make it more livable, more walkable, more, you know, to serve the community better. So we have seen some of that over the years, which is great. Anyone else? Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
In a second, please.
I second.
I
Verna
second.
Calderon.
Okay, great.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you
thank
for
you so
stepping in,
much.
Sandra.
Thank you, Eric. Feel better. Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.